Hello, everyone, and welcome to Lavras Gold's live digital roadshow hosted by Six. I'm pleased to introduce their speaker for today, their president and CEO, Mike Durose. He's going to be walking us through a company presentation, and after, we're going to be accepting questions live. So, as a reminder, if you'd like to participate, please feel free to submit those questions in the chat on the right-hand side of the screen. If you'd like to get in contact with the Lavras Gold team, we're also going to be submitting a survey link in the chat, so look out for that. And as always, the summit is being recorded, and it's going to be available to watch on demand in the coming days. Without further ado, I'd like to hand things over to you, Mike, so that we can get started.
Thanks, Cam, and thanks everybody for taking the time this morning to listen to our presentation. The title of our presentation is Exploring to Realize the Potential of a Multi-Million Ounce Gold District in Southern Brazil. I will be making some forward statements, and so please read the fine print. Lavras is a relatively new company. We've been public for about just over a year now. We were spun out from a company called Amarillo Gold. Since that time, we've been focusing primarily on exploration on our Lavras do Sol project, LDS project in southern Brazil. We have a team that has a combination of technical exploration and mining experience together with capital markets acumen. We have a relatively tight capital structure with a very strong shareholding support and base. We have a very large land package with a pipeline of 23 known gold targets at different stages of exploration in an area of excellent infrastructure. And so far, we've defined 7 advanced gold deposits and exploration targets, and including 5 in the last 5 months or so. In terms of the management team, I'm Mike Durose. My background is in geology, mineral economics, and environmental engineering. I worked previously as an exploration geologist in Canada looking for base metals and gold, and then ended up as a sell-side gold mining analyst for many, many years, working with a number of large investment banks. And I am a professional geologist. In terms of our chairman is Rolly Uloth. He is a businessman and entrepreneur, started a company called Rosedale Transport, a big trucking company based here in the Toronto area. And he was also previously president and CEO of Wesdome Gold. Our country manager is Paulo Serpa. He is a Brazilian. He is a mining engineer with an MBA. He is very well connected with respect to various regulatory agencies within Brazil, and he is the face of our company in the country. Our board of directors is also a combination of technical and financial people. In terms of our capital structure, we currently have 41.1 million shares outstanding, no warrants, and 2.3 million options. Our cash position at the end of March 2023 was Canadian 2.9 million. In terms of our management, our shareholder makeup, 24% of the company is insiders and management. Eric Sprott is an anchor investor at just under 17%. And then we have a mix of institutional and retail holders. We also have a 2% revenue-based royalty, a net smelter return royalty on exploration ground around what we call the Mara Rosa project, which was a previous project that we held that was sold to Hochschild Mining last year. From a valuation perspective, one way to look at exploration companies is called enterprise value per ounce of gold in the ground. It's really one screening mechanism to see how you rank. Basically, enterprise value is defined as market cap plus net debt divided by your ounces in the ground. In our case, we're trading at about $4 an ounce. For the industry, the exploration companies are trading between $25 and $30 an ounce. So we think we're relatively undervalued. If you take a position in the company today, you're essentially getting the exploration portfolio plus a royalty for free. Since we're in the gold exploration business, I like to look at this metric. It's called discovery costs. Basically, it's a way to benchmark how effectively or efficiently you're spending your exploration dollars and actually finding gold. In our case, our average discovery cost for the million ounces that we have on the property so far is about $11 US an ounce. That compares with an industry average of $30 an ounce, and in Latin America, about $132 an ounce. So we're doing much, much better than average. The reason for that, in my opinion, is twofold. Number one, we're in an area of excellent infrastructure, so our actual costs of exploration are relatively low. And number two, the geological nature of the target that we're drilling off, or targets that we're drilling off, is quite exceptional in terms of being well endowed with gold. Just a very quick comment on our royalty. This is something that I think the market doesn't completely appreciate, but when we created the company and were spun out from Amarillo Gold, we created a revenue-based royalty on all of the exploration ground around what's called the Posse Gold Project. This Posse Gold Project is actually about 1 million ounces. This is what Hochschild's mining is building to production. This mine should be in production in about 12 months from now, in the first half of 2024. Hochschild's is essentially spending $200 million to build this mine and mill facility. So just to be clear, we don't have a royalty on the production coming out of that initial pit. However, we do have a royalty on all the exploration ground, totaling something like 65,000 hectares, both in and around the mine area, plus regionally. And so any new discoveries that would be made would accrue to that royalty. We did make a discovery when we were with Amarillo Gold, but on a project called Pestino, which is located about 3 kilometers to the northeast of this Posse pit. Pestino is a gold-bearing structure that we drilled 40 holes into. We defined a gold-bearing structure over about 1.7 kilometers of strike length. We drilled it vertically to about 200 meters where it was still open, and the deposit itself actually dips to the northwest about 60 degrees. Hochschild's has not put an official resource around this number. However, my opinion is that's probably around 300,000 to 400,000 ounces or so. And Hochschild's has indicated that they will release a new resource update towards the end of 2023, where they will include this Pestino discovery into their resource. So if there is a resource there, that would accrue to our royalty. Just to give people a sense as to what it's worth to our company, Lavras Gold, every 100,000 ounces of gold that would be, say, discovered at something like Pestino, times a 2% royalty, times call it $2,000 an ounce gold, pretty much the current gold price, would be worth something like $4 million US to that royalty value. So you can do the math from there and figure out that it is a tangible asset. It has real value, and is something we're very happy to have. Also, I should mention that any other discoveries made in the district would accrue to our royalty as well. Now for the fun part, we're going to now move from central Brazil and that royalty down to where we're focused, which is southern Brazil on our LDS project. Just to orient people, Rio de Janeiro is here, Sao Paulo is here. If you go south, you go to a port city called Porto Alegre in the state of Rio Grande do Sul. You drive for 4.5 hours down tarmac roads, such as what is seen in this picture, where you see sort of rolling grassland and cattle grazing fields, infrastructure, power, water, and so on. So it's in an area of great infrastructure, and certainly not in the northern part of Brazil and the Amazonian jungles. In terms of geology, very quick comment. This picture on the left-hand side shows basically a volcanic complex. In terms of the geology that we're dealing with the remnants of the old magma chamber, which is shown here in the middle of this picture, and basically some of the remnant overlying volcanic rocks. And why is that important? It's important because these types of what we call intrusive hosted gold systems can be very, very large. Some examples include Porgera in Papua New Guinea, which is 35 million ounces of historical production plus existing reserves. The gold-bearing structures there occur over an area of 3 to 4 kilometers. Something like Olympic Dam, which is in Australia, it's a byproduct of a uranium and copper mine that's owned by BHP Minerals. Basically, you find the mineralized rock over an area of 4 to 5 kilometers, and Cripple Creek in Colorado would be another example of an intrusive type of gold system, just under 30 million ounces and mineralization occurring over an area of 5 to 6 kilometers. So when we look at our Lavras do Sul project in southern Brazil, we know that we have gold and copper mineralization scattered over an area of about 10 to 11 kilometers. So what we can say is we have a very large mineral system. The focus for us is obviously to zero in on those areas where we can find economic concentrations of mineralization. If we look at the geology in a little bit more detail, pretend you're sitting in a helicopter or a satellite looking straight down, what you see is a circular feature here in the browns and the reds. This is the remnants of that old magma chamber that I was telling you about. Off to the right, you can see the green rocks. That's the overlying flanking volcanics. All of these little names that we have annotated here in the slide are the 23 known gold showings that we know about so far on our property. Essentially, the Portuguese arrived in this area in the late 1700s, and they started mining and digging out what I believe would have been visible gold showings throughout this intrusive complex and into the volcanic rocks. So essentially what we're doing is we're following up on all these old diggings, we're mapping the geology, we're trying to understand, what's going on, and then we start drilling these things off. On the right-hand side is a blow up of that intrusive complex, and you can see where we've been focused. As I mentioned, we have 1 million ounces in what we call 2 of these 23 showings, 500,000 ounces at Buccia, 500,000 ounces at Cerrito. And since we've gone public last year, we've announced a number of new discoveries, including Zekasuza, Galvo, Matilge Extension, and Villa Marietta. Canalera, this deposit right here, just to the east of Galvo, was drilled off in 2007, 2008, and I'll talk about all of these during the presentation. Just to give people a sense, this red outline shows our contiguous claims. Basically, we cover all of the favorable geology. Historically, there's been something like 65,000 meters of drilling completed on the LDS project, and currently we're in the middle of a 16,000 meter drilling program. In fact, we've completed just under 11,000 meters since we started this program last year. We should be completed by the end of July, at least for this program, and therefore we will still have a lot of news flow coming in the near future. In terms of the first 500,000 ounces, it's a deposit called Buccia. It's basically a large kind of massive mineralization sitting right at surface. Buccia is still open at depth, and it's still open along strike. In fact, we have a drill turning at Buccia now, testing for some of our ideas about where we think the gold mineralization extends. It is 500,000 ounces, grading just under 1 gram per ton. This is what the rocks look like. They're essentially altered granite. So this is the sort of rock you would see in a kitchen countertop, for example. The difference being that we've had a lot of gold-bearing fluids that have worked their way through the rocks and deposited the gold. The second 500,000 ounces is a deposit we call Cerrito. Basically, the rocks look different. They're what we call silicified structures. We see this dark gray, which is basically quartz. We see this musky colored mineral, which is called muscovite. And then we have a disseminated mineral, a sulfide mineral called pyrite, which is actually hosting the gold. What we've defined, again, is a at surface or near surface deposit. In this case, strikes for at least 1.3 kilometers. And we've drilled it down to about 425 meters or so. It's still open along strike and certainly open along depth. Grades here are a little bit lower, about 0.7. We think we can improve on that, and I'll show you why in the next slide. Basically, this yellow bubble here is the outline of the Cerrito deposit. We actually drilled 2 holes and released these results about a month ago, just to the south of Cerrito on a claim block we call Villa Marietta. And Villa Marietta has a number of gold and soil anomalies that we were testing. And the best hole that we got was the first one that we drilled, actually, which was 23VM001, where we intersected 1.3 grams per ton gold over a distance of about 23 meters, or 28 meters, I should say, right from surface. And so that 1.3 gram per ton gold grade is about 85% higher than the average grade of the Cerrito deposit, which is what you want to see in any kind of a open pit scenario where you get higher. You want to mine the higher grade first and then get the lower grade later. We also got another long interval of, I think it was 53 meters, about 0.7 grams in that same hole. So, we're very encouraged by these sorts of results, and we certainly think that there's a lot more drilling to be done here at Cerrito. For example, looking at these gold and soil anomalies, we know there's more targets, and so we think we can improve on the size of Cerrito, and certainly hopeful that the grade will also start to improve as well. This is what the rocks look like. They're essentially altered granites, again, with a lot of silica or quartz, sericite, and then it's the pyrite, this disseminated pyrite, which is actually hosting the gold. Now, for the first discovery that we announced last year, it was called Zekasuza. Essentially, we drilled 14 holes, just under 3,000 meters, And what we were targeting are what we call intersecting structures, intersecting fault zones. And this shows up in the geophysics. In this case, we're showing magnetic data. So these blue sort of features are basically what we call magnetic lows. So we can actually measure the differences in the magnetic characteristics of the rocks using this particular survey. And so where these structures come together, we tend to find gold-bearing rocks. So in this case, we drilled 14 holes and we hit gold in all holes. And just to provide some context, this is Zekasuza on the left-hand side, but you can see just off to the right, about 650 to 700 meters is a target that was drilled in 2007, 2008 called Candelaria. We have a gold-bearing structure, again, associated with this magnetic feature. And the best hole that we drilled here was 36 meters of 1.4 grams per ton gold, 70 meters down the drill core, so about 50 meters vertical. So obviously a very large gold system developing here, and also at Zekasuza. The thesis is that these may connect, and it may in fact be the same gold system, just different names at this point. But we'll have to follow up with this and see if that is the case. And, we've completed some soil surveys in this area and certainly getting some positive results. So we're very optimistic about this whole sort of Candelaria, Zekasuza area as a future drilling target. In terms of what does the rocks look like? Well, essentially they're altered granites. You can see this in the photo on the left-hand side. We've had these fractured granites with these veinlets that are coming up through the rocks. And in many instances, we're actually starting to see visible gold pop out. So the best hole we got was number 11, where we intersected 15 meters of 5.8 grams per ton gold. But within that 15 meters, there was a 3-meter interval grading 28.2 grams per ton over the 3-meter interval. And that's about 100 meters vertical, so 100 meters below your feet. So certainly open pittable material and rock that's, the value of that rock is close to $2,000 per ton, which is quite incredible. But equally important with respect to what's happening at the LDS project is we're finding these very long intervals of lower grade materials, sort of 0.5, 0.6, 0.7 grams per ton gold. And the reason that's important is because it's this low grade material that actually gives you the size for these types of intrusive hosted gold system. It's the higher grade stuff that will ultimately carry the economics, but it's the lower grade stuff that gives you the large mineral or gold endowment in our case. And so it's very important. This stuff, this lower grade halo of mineralization is very, very important to the story of Lavras. Now we're just going to sort of zoom out a little bit to get a bit of perspective. So I just talked about Zekasuza, which is up here. I didn't put it on the slide, but right to the right of there, to the east of there, is that Candelaria deposit I just talked about. We actually made another new discovery just to the south of Zekasuza. We call it Galvo. And we announced these results about 3 weeks ago. Basically, we followed up and found some old workings from the Portuguese days, some trenches and so on. And then we basically did some geology work and so on and targeted this with 2 drill holes. We were originally going to drill sort of near surface shallower targets, so that the holes were designed for 250 to 300 meters. We actually ended up drilling to 500 meters and 600 meters respectively, because as we were drilling these targets off, we recognized that we were in what we thought was mineralized rock, so we kept the drills going. So the best hole that we got actually out of these 2 holes at Galvo was 10 meters of about 4.6 grams per ton gold, and that was down to a vertical depth of about 461 meters. So that certainly is economic grade over what would be potentially mineable widths for an underground scenario if you were going to mine it underground. But the thing to note about these intrusive gold systems is not only can they be laterally extensive in terms of where their mineralization can occur, but they can also be vertically extensive. And so this is sort of a proof of concept that we know that these gold systems go deep, and certainly we're getting some nice grades and mineable widths, and it's still wide open. So that was really the importance of the Galvo discovery. And also it's important to understand that Galvo is located about 1.2 kilometers to the north of this Butia deposit. And again, Butia is 500,000 ounces. and it's still open. And in fact, we're just drilling to test the western extension of Boutia now. So something very important is starting to develop along what we call the western flank of that intrusive complex. So we're very happy to see these sort of results starting to develop with our drilling program. In terms of Galvo, what does it look like? Basically, as I mentioned, we got 10 meters of 4.6 grams per ton gold. But within that 10-meter interval, there was a 3-meter interval of 11.7 grams, and then there was 1-meter interval of 22.4. In this case, we are seeing visible gold starting to pop out again. In this case, we're showing an example from 22BT001, and this is what it looks like. And in this case, we got a meter of about 16.3 grams when we see the visible gold. Now we're going to go down to the southern part of the property and what we call the Matilge and the Matilge extension areas. There's another gold system starting to develop there. Again, what we're doing is we're targeting these intersecting structures, in this case an east-west structure, a northwest trending structure, and then a northeast trending structure. And essentially what we were looking for was the source of gold that would explain a very large 3.5 kilometer by 2 east-west by 2 kilometer north-south golden soil anomaly that we defined from some surface work. And so we've started to find some of the sources of that gold, both at Matilge and Matilge extension. And let me see, if we look at a section, this is looking at a section east through Matilge, you can see what we're starting to see is a very large, again, halo of lower grade mineralization. For example, hole number 2, we hit 145 meters of 0.7 grams per ton gold. But within that, we're getting a higher grade sort of intervals, in this case, 27 meters of just over a gram. And so we're seeing that consistently throughout this Matilge area and throughout the intrusive complex, in fact. And again, this stuff occurs right at surface. And so the idea is that ultimately you're going to be able to bulk mine this stuff. And so the economics actually becomes quite compelling, and the size of these systems can be actually quite large as well. This is what the rocks look like. You can see it's silicified and altered granites, again with muscovite, silica, and then pyrite carrying the gold. In this case, it was 3.7 grams over a meter. We also see areas of visible gold popping out. In this case, we have what we call a lamprofere dike, and then we have silicified mineralization with visible gold popping out. In this case, we got 31 grams over 0.6 meters. And then this sort of piece of drill core really tells the story for the geologists that are listening. Essentially, what you want to see with these types of gold systems is long-lived events, so multiple pulses of potential mineralization. We're starting to see that just in this rock. We have some pink material, which is what we call potassic mineralization, high-grade mineralization, pulse number 1. We have this this musky green looking mineral that's called sericite or muscovite, and that's pulse number 2. We have this gray silicified zone, which is what we believe is this stuff, which would be pulse number 3. And then we have this milky quartz late stage material with some disseminated gold, actually free gold in it. That's pulse number 4. So this milky quartz stuff actually gave us 13 grams over 0.66 meters. So, but really the key takeaway here is that we're seeing a very long-lived mineral system on the Lavras property, and this is what you want to see for these very large gold systems. Also, we're seeing copper starting to pop out, and where we see copper, we tend to see elevated silver grades and high gold grades. So this is just showing a gold and copper anomaly, soil anomaly for Matilge extension. You can see there's a nice arcuate-looking sort of shape here, so something funny is going on. We're not quite sure yet. However, when we drilled at Matilge extension, the best hole that we drilled was 10 meters of 13 grams gold, 23 silver, and 0.22% copper. And so why is that important? It's important because it's a very different style of mineralization that we've seen in other parts of the complex. So what I've shown on this slide is really a vertical section where on the right-hand side, you're essentially sitting at surface, let's say, and then on the left-hand side, you're going deeper. In fact, we're going down 300 meters below our feet. So the idea is that at the surface, you're seeing these very fresh granites, if you like, this pink-looking rock with some black mafic minerals. As you go down, you're seeing a little bit of alteration. You're seeing these silica veinlets with sulfides and chlorite in it. But look at the grades. We're getting like 5 grams gold. We're getting some anomalous silver and anomalous copper. Even these little microfractures, we're getting very high-grade gold. We're getting anomalous silver and copper. As we go a little bit deeper, about 270 meters vertical, you can see the rocks are getting more altered, and you're seeing these veinlets here. In this case, chalcopyrite with chlorite rims, no silica, but we're still getting great gold grades, 3.2 grams in this case, silver 14 grams, and almost 0.8% copper. So that's yellowy colored minerals, chalcopyrite. Then we go a little bit deeper. We're getting into these brecciated rocks. These are what we call hydrothermal breccias, but very good gold, silver, and copper grades. Then at about 300, just under 300 meters, we're into another breccia with really good silver, copper, and gold grades. And then at the very bottom, we get into what we think is a potassic alteration, but the mineralization is starting to change. We're getting this purple mineral, which is what we call bornite, which is a high copper gold sort of mineral. It's copper mineral, but in this case, it's carrying gold most likely. Chalcopyrite and pyrite, so very much higher temperature fluids, just down this 300-meter pile. So very important style of mineralization we need to follow up on, and certainly telling us that this is, there's more targets probably like this that exist on the property, and it certainly opens up a lot of possibilities for the project overall. So that's pretty much just to sum things up. What I wanted to talk about, we have a property with the geology that is, potentially hosts a very large mineral system. We're starting to see that with our drilling. We think this could be on par with some of the world-class deposits out there that I mentioned earlier in the presentation. We obviously have to prove that. We are building from a base of 1 million ounces so far in 2 of these 23 known gold showing scattered throughout our property position. And, we've had really good success in the last 12 months, just drilling off these new mineral systems that are still open to expansion. And so certainly our future work will continue to focus on growing our gold inventory. We think most importantly that if you were to take an investment in our company today, you're essentially getting that royalty optionality plus the exploration optionality essentially for free. So with that, Cam, I can open it up to any questions. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Mike. Really appreciate you going through that great deck. And yeah, just as a reminder to everyone in the audience, if you'd like to participate in the Q&A, we're about to start. So feel free to submit your questions in the chat found on the right-hand side of your screen. But to begin with, I'd like to ask this question, and it has come in from Michael. When do you expect to have put together enough ounces in the right place with an adequate metallurgy to start looking at a PEA?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Well, as I mentioned, we already have 1 million ounces in 2 of these sort of 23 known gold showings. So we've got 43-101 reports for both of those 500,000 ounces, 500,000 ounces at Butia, then 500,000 ounces at Cerrito. So in terms of the metallurgy, it's disclosed in both of those reports, but we're getting between sort of 80 and 90% recoveries in the preliminary metallurgical work that we've done so far. And certainly there's more to do, but the indications are that it's for the most part non-refractory. But in terms of building out more gold inventory and mineral endowment, really we have a 2-pronged strategy, I would say. As we sort of drill and discover these new deposits, we need to sort of figure out what the potential size of these things can be. So it's sort of more of a broad-based step-out drilling, if you like, to understand the extensions of these things. And then once we understand the limits, then we can kind of go in and infill drill and then start to put a gold inventory around that. So I would say that Matilji, of the deposits that we've discovered so far, Matilji is going through that phase now where we're getting to a point we could probably start to at least internally understand what the gold inventory could be. We're infill drilling now and sort of still testing some of the extensions at Zekasuza, so that's sort of work in progress. As I mentioned, for Cerrito, we stepped out a little bit on that Villa Marietta claim block to sort of just see if we could extend it. So we have more work to do there. And then at Butia, where we have 500,000 ounces, it's still open. both to the east, to the west, and at depth. So we actually have a drill there now where we're stepping out to see if we can build out some ounces there and find the extensions. So that's kind of what we're doing. And then we have the other ideas, because we have two drills, we want one drill to sort of test a lot of our new ideas as well, because a lot of these things, we're the first company that's actually consolidated this property. And so that's really the opportunity, is for us to go and test a lot of these showings that have just never been drilled. Like Galvo would be a classic example of that. These rocks are 600 million years old, and we're the first company in 600 million years to actually drill that target at Galvo. And here we are, we found the gold already. And so, it's quite rare actually for a company of our size to control a property of this scale and this potential upside. And so that's why we're quite excited by it.
Okay, fair enough. Another question that we have is just regarding what catalysts are you anticipating between now and the end of this year?
Yeah, so as I said, we've been just putting out drilling information. And so the catalysts, at least in the near term, will really be revolving around just drilling information and just hopefully drilling success. If, to the extent that the market is excited by what we're doing, those are the catalysts to build value. So yeah, that's it.
No, fair enough. Absolutely. There is a question that's just regarding what's the permitting environment like in Brazil, and how are you managing community relations?
Yeah, that's a great question as well. It's very important. The permitting environment is good. Basically, in Brazil, there's the mining rules and the mining law is actually quite good. I would say it's comparable in many respects to what we see in North America. So there's a very systematic sort of series of steps that you have to take to kind of get your permits. And so the way it works on the exploration side is you have 3 years for your initial exploration license, then you can apply for an extension, and then you get another 3 years. And after the 6 years, then you have to convert those those exploration claims into mining concessions. And then once you've got mining concessions, then you start environmental permitting and all that kind of stuff to get your various licenses to construct. So it's a very well-defined sort of process to do that. And what we're doing we're starting to do some of that on some of our claims. We have 29 claim blocks at various stages of exploration and mining and all that. So we're starting to do some preliminary work on the permitting side in that sense. On the community relations part, it's a great question, but basically our office is actually in the town of Lavras do Sol, and almost all of our people are hired from the town or the local communities. And our country manager, Paulo Serpa, who's Brazilian, he's actually from that state, and he and his wife moved to the town of Lavras do Sol. So he's really the face of our company in Brazil. And we started a program called the Gold Trail, which so Lavras has a history of gold mining, as I mentioned, going back to the late 1700s. And so we started something called the Gold Trail, where we have 5 it's like a passport system with 5 different stations. The idea is that people from the community and school children and so on come to our office. We sit them down, we talk a little bit about the Gold Trail and what they're going to see, and then we give them a passport, and then they can go to each of these different stations. They learn about the station, the history of the mining or whatever, the museums and so on, and then they'll get their passport stamped, and then they'll come back to our office, which is station number 5. One of the geologists will come out and with a piece of drill core and just explain, exactly what mining is all about. So that's sort of the way that we're trying to educate the community and engage the community, really, to let them know what the positive aspects of gold mining is all about. I've been down to the property a number of times. I've met with the local mayor in Lavras. He's very positive and supportive of us building a mine in the area. And so certainly this is the way we're sort of managing our community relations, starting from the inside and kind of moving outwards.
Oh, that's great to hear. Another question that we have is just regarding what your end game for the company is.
Well, there's multiple end games, but really the end game for our company is, at this stage at least, is to de-risk the geology and de-risk on the permitting side. We need to really understand what it is we have from a geological perspective. Once we understand the geology, then we can start to do the preliminary engineering work and sort of mine designs and try and conceptually understand exactly what kind of size and scale of project you could have at Lavras. And then on the other sort of track, we'll be de-risking on the permitting side along the way, and we'll take it from there. I mean, would we build this thing? Well, I mean, it really comes down. I've having been a mining analyst for so many years, I've seen this multiple times, and so there's multiple different avenues to crystallize value for shareholders. And in many respects, the market will tell us what our end game is going to be. So if we had the valuation, the equity valuation that says, hey, you guys could raise money and you could actually build this mine and do it in a non-dilutive way, which makes sense for all stakeholders, then that's one avenue you could pursue. If your valuation is at a point where you can't do that because your equity financing, for example, would be too high, or the cost of capital is too high, then it's clearly you would be looking to hand off the project to a larger player. So what can we control right now? We can control the drilling, the exploration program, the permitting kind of program, de-risk it. We could take it through to preliminary engineering work, and then we'll assess at that time what the market conditions are like and what our options are.
Okay. Well, Mike, I want to thank you for coming on today, as well as you, Anne-Marie, for joining us, going through a great presentation and a great Q&A. Of course, I also want to thank everyone who's joined us in the audience, especially those who have asked us questions. But Mike, before we wrap up, I want to pass things over to you for any closing remarks that you might have.
Yeah, thanks, Cam. Well, thanks everyone again for taking the time to listen to the Lavras story. We think we have a fantastic project, and we're just really getting going. And thanks for the opportunity and for your time for listening. Thank you.